Hi, this is Robin Lysne. I'm the author of the Legendary Women Ancestor Series, and I'm doing a presentation today. Welcome everybody for Discovery of Writing and the Research for Legendary Women Ancestor Series. So I'm going to just start. My first of all, discovery of writing for me happened a long time ago when I first came out to California. And before that, I was an artist. I mean, I am still an artist and I still do art. These are a couple of paintings that I did, or drawings. I call them painted drawings. This is what I was doing in Michigan. I was a curator. I did all kinds of art shows, taught art for over 15 years. And then when I came out here, I went to graduate school. And that is how it helped me to get more involved in writing. Went to Holy Names University, the Institute in Culture and Creation Spirituality, and Matthew Fox, who is the author of 37 books, was the founder of it. What was exciting about going to that school was I had a lot of teachers, Brian Swim, Starhawk, Louise Satish, Buck Ghost Horse, and David White came one time as a guest, and he was an incredible poet and was considered dealing with poetry in a way that was so amazing and depth filled. So I was the one who was offering helping people. My work in at Holy Names College was to support the guest speakers. So I set him up with a microphone and everything, and he asked if I would go back and help with the books, and I said sure, and he told me how much they cost and all that. So I went to the back of the room. There were 90 students, and when I stepped into the room, I was so amazed at what I witnessed. That was, the whole room had gone into a deeper place of silence and amazing connection with everyone. So I was really impressed with that. And so I started studying with him, and I studied with him over several years, over 6 years, followed him around all over California, and helped with his books, and did workshops with him and all kinds of things. And so he was a major teacher for me about learning how to write poetry. The other authors here, Louise Satish, Starhawk, Brian Swim, and Buck, all wrote books. Brian wrote several books, The Universe Story. Starhawk has written several books, so has Louise Satish. And Buck actually created a book about Native American spirituality, and I was very interested in that. And this also is a picture of his wife, Vicki. Buck has passed. The rest of them are all still here, so it's great. So the first book that I wrote, Dancing Up the Moon, was focused on a women's guide to creating traditions that bring sacredness to daily life. This was the first book that I published 8 years after I graduated from Holy Names. It started with a thesis that I had written on rites of passage. It was a story of rites of passage that I did with my family for my oldest niece, Lysne. Her name was Lysne Tate. Now it's Lysne Tate. Then it was Lysne Beckwith. And I did a story about it and was excited about the fact that after we did her rites of passage, we also did my grandsons, and so we did my nephews and other nieces. So that was really exciting. So 8 years after I started working at Holy Names College and graduated from there, I started a massage therapy center, and did private sessions, and also worked in various places all over the Bay Area, both in San Francisco and Oakland. And what was exciting for me about that period was I never thought of myself writing a book ever. I never thought of writing, but the thesis became a book and expanded into Women's Guide to Creating Traditions that Bring Sacredness to Daily Life for People. So the month after my book came out, and I had a book tour already organized, my mother, Marty Heerens, came down with pancreatic cancer. So I shifted my book tour to the Midwest and decided that I would be going home into Rockford, Illinois, where I was from. And so this is a picture not long after I got there, or it could have been before. They had come out the year before for me during a time that I was having some challenges. So they came out and were there for me. So this is my mom. She died on May 15th in 1996. This is a picture of her with me the year before she was diagnosed. So what that inspired for me was after she passed, I got some grant money and I was able to go on a tour to Norway to discover my ancestors. So I went to Bergen and then I took a boat trip down the Sogn Fjord all the way to Laerdal, which is almost a day. It takes a whole day to get there, half a day anyway, by the boats. And I went to the tourist bureau and I mentioned that I was interested in finding the cemetery sites of my ancestors. And the tourist lady said, what's your name? I told her, and she said, oh, how wonderful. She said, would you like to meet your cousin? And I said, cousin? What cousin? And she said, oh, you have cousins here. Yes, we're very small and only 2,000 people here. And your cousin is here. And I said, I didn't know that. I don't want to bother him. And she goes, oh, that's so Norwegian. So she ended up calling him. His name was Walther Lysne. He's still very much alive and lives in Laerdal. And so I went to visit them, and he and his wife and his child. And we were very excited to meet each other. We exchanged all kinds of information. And he's the one who told me about Randine, who is the subject of my Ancestral Women's Series first two books. But when I came back, I kept thinking, what would it be like to be a midwife in the 1820s and 30s? And I didn't know a lot about her, but as I looked at her genealogy and her birth dates and death dates, I was kind of taken by how long she lived, how many children she had, how much work she must have done. So I came back to Illinois, took care of my dad, wanted to make sure he was okay. And then in October, I went back to California, and my publishing company, Kenori Press, called me and said they wanted another book. So a year later, this is the other book. I decided to move down to Santa Cruz, away from Marin County, where I used to live, and start a new private practice and finish this book. That was the main thing. So I took several months to write it. I took the same material that I had in the book and converted it into a 365-day meditation and celebrations. So then several years later, before I wrote this book, Heart Path, I met a man. A woman came and lived in the same house I lived in as a guest, and she was from New Zealand, and she was having a workshop and private sessions. I went to the workshop, which was up Mount Madonna, and I met my husband, and we got married about a year later. And we had his two children that we were caring for that were living with us. And Heart Path was a meditation I had been working with for a number of years from one of my guides, Wu Lan. And so I started thinking about writing this book. We were married in 1998, actually 97, and we had a child in 98. And when my child died, I had midwives. And so I started thinking again about midwifery and about Randine, my great-great-great-grandmother. So over the years, after we got together and I lost my daughter, it kind of blew open my consciousness so that then I was focused much more on my abilities as an intuitive and as a medium. And it felt like that was my work. That's what I was here to do. So through that work and during that time I was building my practice, I wrote this book. In 2008, my former husband decided to go back to his homeland in Puerto Rico. He was much older than I was. He was ready to retire. And for me, I needed to stay in California because I had worked 10 years to build my practice in energy medicine, intuitive work. I'd worked in a number of stores like East West Bookshop for 10 years. So I wanted to go back to graduate school. So I moved over to Walnut Creek, and I was able to do 2 books. One was my Institute of Natural Medicine dissertation, and this was published 2 years after I graduated. And then this was I went to Mills College in order to do an MFA, and this was Poems for the Lost Deer, which I did for my thesis at Mills. So when I got back to Santa Cruz, I met with a group of friends that were part of my Emerald Street poetry group. These weren't all of them, but these were the ones who were interested in having a book of their own published. And so we decided to create a cooperative publishing group. And so these, I've done 3 out of, actually 4 out of the 6 that are here. So also, I decided I was still doing research on Randine, trying to understand what her life was like. I took my first book, Dancing Up the Moon, and expanded it and created Ceremonies from the Heart for Children, Adults, and the Earth. And I published that in 2017. So then, after many months and years, actually almost 20 years of doing research on this and writing sections of the book, I was kind of frustrated with the fact that it was not working, and I couldn't read it through. I was all these mistakes. So I went to a conference at the Catamaran Literary Conference, which was down in Monterey Bay. And I had a wonderful teacher, Elizabeth Mackenzie, and she had written novels, and she suggested that I keep writing this because she really loved the dialogue. And she said, you know, you just need to get an editor. So as I worked with her in this class, I realized that there was a lot of value in this, and I really needed to finish it. So I had the birth dates, death dates. I was writing stories about different parts of her life. And then it was really clear to me I had to keep going with it. So in 2020, I published the first one, which was book 1, The Legend of Randine Entering the Sisterhood. And then the second book was The Legend of Randine, the Laerdal Letters. The Laerdal Letters tells about how she went to Oslo, and that time it was Christiana, and she went there to learn how to be a midwife. And what she did as a midwife in those days, she had to be married, she had to go to school pregnant, and she had to have a permission from her husband and her priest. So that meant that the whole family, or her minister, so the whole family had to surround her, the whole community had to surround her to send her off to Christiana for the school, because it was, if you drive, it's 5 hours away. If you would take a boat, it would be several days. So she was there for a whole year. She had a child in Christiana and a daughter. And so the story of her life at that time and what women went through was part of what I wanted to write about. Also, in the first book, Entering the Sisterhood, it was about how she became someone who wanted to do midwifery because of the tragedies she had gone through. She started as a pregnant teen and moved herself into, it was taken under the arms, and this is the story I created, taken under the arms of her midwife, and her midwife became like a mothering support person for her, along with another woman, and they brought her into the Sisterhood of Freya, which gave her power and understanding of who she was, or who she is, and giving her an understanding of her strength and her ability. So that's what I wanted to share in that book, and how someone with such a difficult early life could survive and make it through into her present state, or in the present state that she ended up in. So the two books are, the first one is about her in Bergen, and the second, and learning midwifery and getting into midwifery, and the second is her going to school and marrying the father of a child she wet nursed. And there's a lot of complications in the story, but anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you. So Legendary Women Ancestor Series started 3 years ago in 2020. Then my grandfather had written this book, Walther Lysne. This is Joe and this is Walter. He had written a manuscript that he never was able to publish. And I wanted to share with, I've always been interested in the book, but it wasn't publishable. So at the time, so this last year I've been rewriting it and working with an editor. And it's really the story about Heinrich, who was Kisti and Ola's son, Randine and Ola's son. So their oldest son was the first immigrant to come to the U.S. in the 1850s. So this is the book launch for this new book that just came out, Legendary Women Ancestor Series, Book 3, and Kisti's Royal Garden is the name of it. So they moved to northern Wisconsin, and they had 3 children with them at the time. And there were many interesting things that happened. They began to have relationships with the Wulan people, with the Winnebago people, or the Ho-Chunk people up in northern Wisconsin, because they bought land they didn't realize was actually the land of the Ho-Chunk people. So this book talks about their relationship with the Native people, and also shows the ceremony where Kisti became a very honored part, and so did Heinrich, of the life of land up in the northern area with the Ho-Chunks. So this is a picture of that family. So this is not a fictional book like Randine. Randine story, The Legend of Randine, I only had birthdays, death dates, and the fact that she was a midwife. Everything else I had to create. And this is instead, the Kisti's Royal Garden is the story of the Lysne family. This is Heinrich, Lolly, Susan, Randine, and then other members of the family. And this is my grandpa right here when he was a child. So he learned all about his family from the stories that his grandfather and his father and his mother told about their family, as well as Lolly, Susan, and Randine. And then this is my family today. This is my grandpa and grandma Lysne. Both my parents and the grandparents are all gone now. My sister Kisti here passed away in 2009. And but the rest of us are all here still. These are my nephews and nieces. So I just wanted to share with you the book launch, which is what we just had here, the book launch of the Kisti's Royal Garden. And I'm really excited to share this with you because it's a very important, actually, history of the first settlers in northern Wisconsin, not just my family, but also many other families. So I hope you enjoy that book launch, and I look forward. If you would like to purchase my book, it's at robinlysne.com. So you can go to robinlysne.com, or you can go to bluebonebooks.com. And those are the websites where you can get it. So I look forward to having some begin to discover these stories. Thank you.